The great chamber floated in space like a giant crystal ball. Inside, lights moved and danced as the most powerful beings in the galaxy held their meeting. These were the Elder Council, creatures so old and wise that they had forgotten what it felt like to be young. Elder Zixthara moved through the chamber like a cloud of blue gas. He had no solid body anymore. His people had given up physical forms millions of years ago. They thought bodies were too limiting, too weak. Now they were pure energy, pure thought, pure power. The reports from the outer rim are boring as always. Zixthara said to the others. His voice sounded like wind through empty caves. Another primitive world thinks they are ready to join us. They call their planet Earth. Elder Vexdon laughed. If you could call the sound a silicon crystal makes when it vibrates a laugh. She looked like a living diamond the size of a building. Her people had also left flesh behind long ago, choosing to become living gems instead. Earth? She asked. Let me see their files. A chamber filled with images and data. Pictures of blue oceans, green forests, and strange two-legged creatures appeared in the air. The creatures walked upright and had soft pink skin. They built cities of metal and glass. They flew in small ships that burned chemical fuel to move. How? Cute, said Elder Morthic. He was the oldest of them all. His species had become pure light itself. When he spoke, colors danced in the air. They still have bodies. They still need to eat food and breathe air. How did they even learn to travel between stars? Zixthara studied the data with amusement. They use controlled explosions to push their ships. They burn fossil fuels and nuclear materials. Their biggest ships are only 1,000 meters long. My private shuttle is bigger than that. The other elders found this very funny. They had ships that were hundreds of kilometers long. Their technology could bend space and time. They could create matter from nothing and destroy entire solar systems with a thought. What do they call themselves again? Asked Vexton. Humans, Zixthara replied. They seem to think very highly of themselves. They sent us a message saying they want to meet us as equals. This made all the elders laugh even harder. Equals? These tiny meat creatures want to be equals with beings who had mastered the secrets of the universe? They fight wars with kinetic weapons, Morthic observed, his light form flickering with humor. Metal bullets fired from metal tubes. They throw rocks at each other, basically. And they call this military technology. The data showed human conflicts. Tanks rolling across battlefields. Soldiers with rifles. Ships firing shells at each other. Explosions and fire everywhere. It all looked so violent, so messy, so primitive. They have discovered nuclear fusion, Vexton noted, but they can barely control it. Their reactors are huge and dangerous. They explode if something goes wrong. And look at this, Zixthara pointed to more data. They still die from diseases. They age and grow old. Their bodies break down and stop working. They only live for maybe 100 years. The elders had long ago conquered death. They had existed for millions of years. Disease meant nothing to beings made of energy, and crystal, and light. The idea of dying from old age seemed ridiculous to them. Should we even bother with first contact? Asked Morthic. They are so far behind. U.S., it would be like us trying to talk to bacteria. The galactic law says we must offer guidance to all species that achieve faster than light travel. Zixthara reminded him, even if they did it by accident. The humans had indeed stumbled into FTL travel almost by luck. They had been trying to build a better fusion reactor when they accidentally created a space-folding field. Their first FTL ship had been held together with metal bolts and hope. Very well, Vexton decided. We will follow the standard first contact protocol. Send 3 motherships to their system. Show them our power. Make them understand how small they are. then offer to guide them to civilization. The standard protocol had worked for thousands of years. Young species saw the elder ships and immediately understood their place in the universe. They became humble and grateful for elder wisdom. They gave up their violent ways and primitive technology. They learned to live in peace under elder guidance. "I will personally oversee this contact," Zixthara announced. "It should not take long. A few demonstrations of our technology, and they will bow down like all the others." The elders began planning. The mission: they would take 3 of their smallest motherships. Each one was still 50 kilometers long and carried enough firepower to destroy planets. They would position themselves at the edge of the human solar system and send a simple message. "We should probably speak slowly and use small words," Morthic suggested. "Their brains are very tiny. They might not understand complex ideas." The meeting continued for several hours. The elders discussed how to best help these primitive humans. They would need to learn proper behavior. They would need to give up their violent ways. They would need to stop building weapons and start building temples to honor the elders. "What do they call their star?" Maxim asked. "Sol," Zixthara replied. "And they have several planets in their system. Most are too hot or too cold for their weak bodies. They can only live on one world without artificial help." "Pathetic," Morthic commented. "We can live anywhere in the universe. Heat, cold, vacuum, gravity, none of it matters to us anymore." The elders had long ago mastered their environment completely. They could survive in the heart of a star or in the cold emptiness between galaxies. Physical limitations were just memories to them now. "Their weapons are particularly amusing," Vexton noted, reviewing more files. "They still use gunpowder. They make explosives by mixing simple chemicals. Their most advanced missiles use solid fuel rockets." The data showed human military equipment: guns that fired metal bullets, tanks with thick armor, bombs that exploded with chemical reactions, ships that launched missiles at each other. Everything looked so crude and simple. "They even fight wars on their planet's surface," Zixthara observed. "They send soldiers to shoot at each other with portable weapons. They build fortifications out of dirt and concrete. It is like watching children play with toys." The elders had not fought physical wars for millions of years. When they disagreed, they simply restructured reality until the problem disappeared. The idea of creatures shooting metal at each other seemed incredibly primitive. "I suppose we must admire their persistence," Morthic said, without much admiration. "They keep fighting even when they are clearly outmatched. They never seem to give up, no matter how hopeless things become." "Stubbornness is not wisdom," Zixthara replied. "They will learn to accept guidance like all the others. A few examples of our power, and they will understand." The meeting began to wind down. Orders were given. 3 motherships would travel to the Sol system. The journey would take only a few days, using elder technology. The humans would be contacted and properly educated about their place in the galaxy. "This should be routine," Vexten concluded. "Another primitive species brought into the light of civilization. They should be grateful for our attention." None of the elders suspected that they were about to meet a species that had turned stubbornness into an art form. A species that had survived ice ages, plagues, wars, and disasters by refusing to give up. A species that looked at impossible odds and decided to fight anyway. The Elder Council had made their first mistake. They thought humans were just another primitive species to be guided and controlled. They had no idea they were about to encounter a species that had spent their entire history learning how to kill things that were bigger, stronger, and more dangerous than they were. The 3 motherships began their journey to Earth, carrying beings who had forgotten what it meant to be desperate, to be hungry, to be afraid. They were about to meet humans who remembered all of those things very well indeed. Admiral Sarah Chun stood on the bridge of the USS Defiance, staring at the message that had just changed everything. The words glowed on her screen in perfect English, translated by computers that had somehow learned human language in minutes. Primitive. Humans of the planet Earth, we are your galactic neighbors. We have come to offer you wisdom and guidance. Prepare to receive our teachings and learn your proper place in the universe. Chun read it 3 times. Each time, the word primitive made her angrier. Sir? Asked Lieutenant Torres from the communication station. Should we respond? Chun looked around her bridge. The USS Defiance was humanity's newest deep space vessel, built in the orbital shipyards above Mars. She had served as Admiral Chun's flagship for 2 years now. The ship was not pretty. It looked like a giant metal brick covered in armor plating and weapon mounts. Humans built things to last, not to look nice. Get me a full scan of those ships, Chun ordered. I want to know everything about them. The sensor officer, Commander Park, worked his controls quickly. Admiral, we have 3 contacts at the edge of the system. They're huge. Each one is about 50 kilometers long. Energy readings are off the charts. I've never seen anything like this. Chun walked to the tactical display. 3 massive shapes appeared in the hologram, positioned near Pluto's orbit. They were sleek and beautiful, made of what looked like living crystal and flowing metal. They radiated power that made human ships look like toys. Any weapon signatures? She asked. Unknown, sir. Their technology is so advanced that our sensors can't identify specific systems. But with ships that size, they could carry enough firepower to sterilize planets. Dr. James Okafor hurried onto the bridge. He was the ship's head scientist and Earth's leading expert on alien contact protocols. His face was pale with excitement and fear. Admiral, this is incredible, he said breathlessly. We're looking at technology that's probably thousands of years ahead of ours, maybe millions. These beings could be older than human civilization. I don't care how old they are, Chun replied coldly. They just called us primitive. Dr. Okafor blinked. Well, comparatively speaking, we are. Admiral, we need to be very careful here. One wrong move and they could wipe us out without effort. Chun had been born on Titan, in the mining colonies. She had grown up during the Belt Wars, when human settlements fought each other for resources and survival. She had seen friends die in battles fought with improvised weapons and desperate courage. She had learned that in space, the strong survived and the weak became food for recyclers. Commander Park, what's the status of our defense fleet? She asked. We have 12 ships in the outer system, sir. The Retribution, Indomitable, and Vengeance are our heavy cruisers. The rest are destroyers and frigates. Total crew complement is about 15,000. And what are we carrying for weapons? Park looked uncomfortable. Standard kinetic batteries, sir. Rail guns and mass drivers. Some missile tubes with nuclear warheads. The new Prometheus rounds for the main guns. Dr. Okafor stepped forward. Admiral, please. We can't possibly fight these beings. Look at those ships. Our entire fleet could fit inside one of them. Chun smiled, but it was not a nice smile. It was the smile of someone who had survived the Belt Wars by being meaner and more stubborn than everyone else. Doctor, let me tell you something about humans. We've been fighting things bigger than us since we lived in caves. We killed mammoths with pointy sticks. We crossed oceans in wooden boats. We flew to the moon using computers less powerful than a calculator. She pointed at the alien ships on the display. These aliens think they're impressive because they're big and old. They think we'll roll over because they have better technology. They're about to learn why that's a mistake. But Admiral, Dr. Okafor started. No buts, Doctor. They came into our system uninvited. They called us primitive. They told us to prepare to be taught our place. Chun's voice got harder with each word. Well, I'm about to teach them something about humans. We don't have a place. We take the place we want. Lieutenant Torres looked up from her station. Admiral, incoming transmission. They're requesting a response to their message. Put me on ship-wide communications, Chun ordered. When the channel opened, her voice reached every human vessel in the system. All ships, this is Admiral Chun. We have uninvited guests in our system. They think we're primitive. They think we'll bow down to them because they have bigger ships. I want every weapon system online and every ship ready for combat. If they want to see primitive, we'll show them primitive. The response was immediate. Across the fleet, weapon systems powered up. Railguns extended from armored turrets. Missile tubes opened like hungry mouths. The human ships looked small and crude compared to the alien vessels, but they were built for one purpose: fighting. Now, Chun said to Torres, send them our response. The message went out on all frequencies. Unknown vessels, you are in violation of solar system sovereignty. You have 30 minutes to state your peaceful intentions or withdraw beyond the heliopause. Any hostile action will be met with force. Dr. Okoffer's eyes went wide. Admiral, you just threatened beings who could destroy our entire civilization. Good, Chun replied. Maybe they'll take us seriously. The alien response came quickly. The same condescending tone, the same assumption of superiority. Foolish humans. You cannot threaten those who have mastered the cosmos for millions of years. We offer you wisdom, and you respond with violence. This is why you need our guidance. Chun laughed. It was not a happy sound. Wisdom? They want to give us wisdom? Commander Park, what do our intelligence files say about species that submit to these elders? Park consulted his database. According to our deep space monitoring, sir, species that accept elder guidance typically give up their military technology. They become peaceful and docile. They stop exploring space and focus on art and philosophy under elder supervision. So they want to neuter us, Chun concluded. Turn us into pets. Make us give up everything that makes us human. She looked around the bridge at her crew. These were people who had chosen to serve on a warship, to go out into the dark and face whatever was waiting there. Dr. Okoffer, let me ask you something. If we accept their guidance, what happens to people like us? What happens to explorers and soldiers and engineers? The scientist was quiet for a moment. I suppose we would need to find new purposes, more peaceful purposes. And what happens to human expansion, to our colonies, to our dream of reaching the stars? They would probably guide us toward more sustainable practices, less aggressive exploration. Chun nodded. So they want to take away everything we've worked for, everything we've fought for. They want us to become something we're not. She turned back to the tactical display. Well, they can want whatever they like, but they're going to have to take it from us. The alien ships began moving closer to the inner system. Their energy signatures grew stronger as they approached. On the human ships, crews rushed to battle stations. Weapons were loaded and targeted. Armor shutters closed over viewports. Admiral, Commander Park reported, the alien ships are definitely moving to engage. They're taking positions that would allow them to attack Earth directly. Then we stop. Them here, Chun decided. All ships form attack formation. Target the lead vessel. Prepare to fire on my command. Admiral, please reconsider, Dr. Okoffer begged. We're about to start a war we cannot possibly win. Chun looked at him with pity. Doctor, you're thinking like a scientist. You're looking at their technology and our technology and doing math. But war isn't math. War is about who wants to win more. And I guarantee you, No one in this galaxy wants to win more than humans who are fighting for their home. She turned to her weapons officer. Load Prometheus rounds in all main batteries. Set proximity fuses for maximum hull penetration. And, Commander Park? Yes, sir? Send a message to Earth Command. Tell them we're about to show the galaxy why you don't threaten humans in their own system. Tell them to prepare for whatever comes next. The human fleet moved forward to meet the alien ships. 12 small, ugly vessels against 3 massive, beautiful ones. By all logic, it should have been a massacre. The humans should have surrendered, or been destroyed in minutes, but logic didn't account for the fact that humans had spent their entire evolution learning to kill things that were bigger, stronger, and more dangerous than they were. Logic didn't account for the fact that humans were really good at it. Admiral Chun watched the alien ships approach and smiled her cold smile. The elders were about to learn their first lesson about humanity. They didn't fight fair, they didn't fight clean, and they absolutely refused to lose. All ships, she announced, fire when ready. The first human ship to fire was the UE's Retribution. Captain Maria Santos had been waiting her whole career for a moment like this. Her ship was a heavy cruiser, built like a flying fortress with armor thick enough to stop asteroids and guns, big enough to crack moons. Main battery, fire. Santos commanded. The Retribution's primary weapon was a mass driver the size of a subway tunnel. It accelerated a shell weighing 2 tons to 15% of light speed using magnetic coils that ran the entire length of the ship. The shell itself was hollow, filled with a mixture that human engineers called hell in a can. Elder Zixthara watched the primitive human ships approach with amusement. Their weapons were so simple, so crude. Metal tubes that threw metal projectiles, using chemical explosions. The elder ships had shields that could stop energy weapons, gravity waves, even antimatter beams. Activate defensive screens, he told his crew. Let them waste their ammunition. When they see how useless their weapons are, they will surrender. The Prometheus shell hit the elder mothership's shields at 40,000 kilometers per second. For a brief moment, the shields held. Energy barriers that had stopped planet-killing weapons flickered and strained against the impact of 2 tons of accelerated metal, and the shell punched through. Elder Zixthara's amusement died as alarms began screaming throughout his ship. The primitive human projectile had not just penetrated their shields. It had gone through them like they were not even there. Damage report, he demanded. Hull breach on deck 47. Came the panicked response. The projectile penetrated 30 meters into the ship and it's burning, sir. The impact site is on fire. This made no sense to Zixthara. Fire needed oxygen to burn, and space was a vacuum. How could something be burning inside his ship? The answer was typically human in its brutal simplicity. The Prometheus shells were designed by engineers who had studied every possible way to destroy things. The hollow core contained thermite, white phosphorus, and something new that human scientists called sticky fire. When the shell punched through the hull, it spread its contents throughout the ship's interior. The thermite burned at 3,000 degrees, hot enough to melt through the ship's biomechanical systems. The white phosphorus created toxic clouds that corroded everything they touched. The sticky fire was an experimental plasma compound that fed on metal, turning the ship's own hull into fuel for more burning. Impossible. Elder Vexden transmitted from her ship. They are using chemical combustion as a weapon. In space. How is this possible? Captain Santos watched her targeting. Display with satisfaction as the alien ship began burning from the inside. Because we're humans, she said to her crew. We've been setting things on fire since we learned how to rub 2 sticks together, and we've gotten really, really good at it. The second human ship to fire was the UE's Indomitable. Captain Jackson, Lee had grown up in the asteroid belt, where miners used controlled explosions to break apart rocks that were miles wide. He understood the power of putting the right amount of explosive in exactly the right place. "Fire mission, danger close," he announced. "All tubes, rapid fire." The Indomitable carried smaller guns than the Retribution, but many more of them. 20 railguns opened fire simultaneously, each one launching shells filled with white phosphorus and thermite. The shells were smaller, only weighing a few 100 pounds each, but there were more of them. Elder Morthic watched in growing horror as the second wave of projectiles struck his ship. The human weapons seemed almost primitive until he realized what they were doing. Each shell was designed to penetrate and then spread fire throughout his vessel. "They are not trying to destroy us quickly," he realized with shock. "They are trying to burn us slowly. They want us to suffer." This was not quite true. The humans were not sadistic. They were practical. They had studied the alien ships during the approach and realized that direct destruction would be difficult. The ships were too big, too well armored, too advanced. So instead, the humans had decided to cook them from the inside. Dr. Okafor watched the battle from the bridge of the Defiance, his face pale with shock. "Admiral, what have we done?" "Those shells are burning through their hulls like paper." Admiral Chun studied the tactical display with professional interest. "We've introduced our guests to human military doctrine, Doctor. When something is too big to kill quickly, you kill it slowly. When something is too tough to break, you cook it until it falls apart." The third alien ship tried to retreat, but Captain Torres of the USS Vengeance was ready for that. Her ship was the fastest in the human fleet, designed to hunt down enemy vessels that tried to escape. "Pursuit course," she ordered. "Load incendiary rounds. Let's show them what happens when you run from humans." The Vengeance's weapons were smaller than the other human ships, but they fired faster. Dozens of shells streaked toward the fleeing alien vessel, each one designed to stick to the hull and burn through it like acid through flesh. Elder Zixthara felt his ship shuddering as fire spread through its corridors. His crew, beings of pure energy who had not felt physical pain in millions of years, were learning what it meant to burn. "How are they doing this?" he demanded. "Our weapons are energy-based. Our defenses are designed for energy weapons. How are primitive kinetic projectiles causing so much damage?" The answer came from his tactical officer, a being whose species had joined the Elders only a few thousand years ago and still remembered physical warfare. "Sir, their weapons are not primitive. They are specialized. While we evolved past kinetic weapons, they perfected them. Every shell is designed to defeat a specific type of defense. They have studied our technology and found its weaknesses." This was exactly what had happened. Human intelligence had been watching Elder ships for years, ever since first contact with other species had revealed their existence. Human engineers had studied Elder technology and identified a critical flaw. It was too advanced. The Elders had spent millions of years developing defenses against energy weapons, exotic matter, and reality-manipulating attacks. They had forgotten how to defend against simple, brutal, kinetic force. "Sir," another officer reported, "the fire is spreading to critical systems. Our biomechanical networks are being consumed by the phosphorus compounds. The thermite is melting through our primary power conduits." Zixthara tried to understand how this was happening. The human weapons used the most basic principles of physics: acceleration, impact, chemical combustion. Things his people had mastered and discarded millions of years ago. "They are fighting us with museum pieces," he said in disbelief. "No," his tactical officer replied. "They are fighting us with weapons we forgot how to defend against. While we were developing shields against antimatter and exotic particles, they were perfecting ways to make metal shells burn through anything." A battle was becoming a rout. The three massive elder ships, each one powerful enough to destroy planets, were being systematically burned apart by human weapons that would have looked primitive to a caveman. Captain Santos opened a channel. To the alien fleet. This is Captain Santos of the U.E.'s Retribution. You wanted to know what primitive humans do when someone threatens their home. This is what we do. We take everything we know about making things burn, and we use it to kill you. The human weapons continued their work with methodical precision. The Prometheus rounds burned through bulkheads like they were made of paper. The incendiary shells turned ship corridors into furnaces. The white phosphorus created clouds of toxic fire that ate through whatever they touched. Admiral, Commander. Park reported from the Defiance. The lead alien ship is losing structural integrity. Internal fires are causing cascade failures throughout their systems. Admiral Chun nodded with satisfaction. Any word from their fleet commander? Yes, sir. They're broadcasting on all frequencies. They want to surrender. Put them through. Elder. Zixthara's voice came over the speakers, distorted by pain and fear. Human vessels, we yield. We surrender. Stop your attack. Chun's voice was cold as space when she replied. You wanted to teach us our place in the universe. Consider this our first lesson in return. This is what happens when someone calls humans primitive. Please, Zixthara begged. We meant no harm. We were following standard first contact protocols. Your protocols assume that primitive species will be grateful for your guidance, Chun replied. They assume we'll be impressed by your big ships and your advanced technology. They assume we'll give up our weapons and our freedom because you know better than we do. She paused, watching as another section of the alien ship began burning. You made one mistake. You assumed that primitive meant weak. You forgot that primitive can also mean vicious. Humans have been killers since before we learned to make fire. Now we've learned to make fire do the killing for us. The alien ships tried to escape, but the human fleet pursued them relentlessly. Every time they thought they were far enough away, more shells would streak out of the darkness, carrying fire and death. Dr. Okafor stared at the tactical display in shock. Admiral, we're not just defeating them. We're destroying them. These beings are millions of years old. They've probably never lost a battle in their entire existence. Then today is a good day for them to learn something new, Chun replied without sympathy. Maybe next time they'll think twice before. Elder Morphic materialized his life form inside the burning corridors of Zixthara's ship. The ancient being had not felt physical sensation in millions of years, but now waves of heat washed over his energy body. The smell of burning metal and toxic smoke filled spaces that should have been sterile and pure. How is this possible? He asked, his form flickering with confusion and fear. We are the Elder Council. We have guided the galaxy for millions of years. How are these primitive creatures doing this to us? Zixthara's gaseous form was barely holding together. Parts of his ship's life support systems were failing, and even energy beings needed certain environmental conditions to maintain coherence. I don't understand it either. Our shields should have stopped anything they could throw at us. An explosion rocked the ship as another section of hull gave way to the burning chemicals. Emergency lights flickered as power systems failed one by one. The elders had built their ships to last forever, but they had never planned for enemies who would try to burn them from the inside out. Status report, Zixthara demanded from his crew. The response came from damaged systems throughout the ship. His people had become so advanced that they were more like living computers than individual beings. But now those computers were being corrupted by heat and toxic fumes. Hull breaches on 47 decks. Internal fires spreading through biomechanical networks. Phosphorus compounds are dissolving our neural pathways. Thermite reactions are melting primary support structures. Zixthara tried to process this information. But how? Their weapons are so simple. Metal projectiles accelerated by magnetic fields. Chemical explosives that burn in predictable patterns. We should be able to defend against such crude technology. Elder Vexdown's crystal form appeared beside them, her usual perfect surfaces now cracked and blackened. That is exactly the problem. We have spent so long developing defenses against advanced weapons that we forgot how to stop simple ones. She gestured toward a burning section of bulkhead. Look at this damage. They are not using exotic particles or reality manipulation. They are using basic chemistry. Fire, metal, and explosive force. The same principles they used when they lived in caves. But they have refined those principles, Morthic observed with growing horror. While we evolved beyond physical warfare, they made physical warfare into an art form. Every shell is precisely designed. Every chemical mixture is perfectly balanced. They have turned primitive technology into something more dangerous than our advanced weapons. Another wave of human shells struck the ship. These ones were different from the first attack. The humans were adapting their weapons in real time, learning from each impact how to cause more damage. Analysis of the new projectiles, Zixthara ordered. The shells now contain reactive compounds that feed on our hull materials, came the response. They are turning our own ship into fuel for more burning. Also detecting nanothermite that targets our specific alloy compositions. Elder Vexton's crystal form rang like a broken bell. They studied our ships during their approach. In those few minutes, they analyzed our construction materials and modified their weapons accordingly. This revelation shocked the elders even more than the damage to their ships. The idea that a primitive species could learn and adapt so quickly was terrifying. The elders made decisions over periods of thousands of years. They planned carefully and moved slowly. But the humans were changing their tactics minute by minute. How long have they been preparing for this? Morthic asked. The answer came from their intelligence systems. What remained of them? Analysis suggests they have been studying elder technology for several years. Human deep space monitoring stations have been tracking our movements and recording our ship signatures. They have been watching us, Zixthara said in disbelief. These primitives have been spying on us, and we never noticed. Not spying, Vexton corrected. Hunting. They have been hunting us, learning our weaknesses, planning how to kill us. The implications of this sank in slowly. The elders had assumed that first contact would follow the usual pattern. They would arrive, demonstrate their superiority, and the primitive species would submit. They had never considered that the primitives might be studying them in return. Their entire military doctrine is based on killing things that are bigger and stronger than they are, Morthic realized. They have spent their entire evolution learning how to be predators. More human weapons struck the ship. The elders could hear the shells burning through deck after deck, spreading fire and destruction with methodical precision. Each impact was placed exactly where it would cause the most damage. They are not trying to destroy us quickly, Vexton observed. They are taking their time. They want us to understand what is happening to us. This was true. Admiral Chun had ordered her fleet to target non-critical systems first. She wanted the elder ships to burn slowly, to give their crews time to think about what was happening and why. It was a lesson in human military psychology. Sometimes it was better to wound an enemy than to kill them quickly. What are they trying to teach us? Zixthara asked. The answer came from an unexpected source. Dr. James O'Coffer's voice crackled over the communication systems. The human scientist had been monitoring elder communications and had decided to explain. You called us primitive, O'Coffer said, his voice calm and academic. You assumed that primitive meant inferior, but you forgot something important about primitive species. We got primitive by surviving everything that tried to kill us. His words echoed through the burning ship as the elders listened in stunned silence. You evolved beyond physical limitations, Okafor continued. You became beings of pure energy and thought. You transcended the need for crude matter and simple chemistry. But we never did. We stayed in the mud and the blood and the fire. We stayed primitive because primitive works. Another explosion rocked the ship. The elders were learning what it felt like to be hunted by a species that had never stopped being predators. Every human weapon is designed by someone who remembers that the universe is trying to kill us, Okafor explained. We build our tools to fight things that are bigger, stronger, faster, and more advanced than we are. Because that is what we have always had to do. Elder Morthic's light form flickered with understanding. They are not using advanced technology to fight us. They are using advanced primitive technology. The difference is crucial. What do you mean? Zixthara asked. Their weapons are still based on the same principles their ancestors used. Acceleration, impact, combustion. But they have perfected those principles using scientific knowledge we helped give to younger species. They combined primitive instincts with advanced engineering. Vexton's crystal form chimed with realization. We gave them the tools to build better weapons to kill us with. This was exactly what had happened. Human technology had been advanced by contact with other species, who had learned from the elders. Humans had taken that knowledge and used it not to transcend physical limitations, but to overcome them more effectively. They turned our gifts into weapons, Zixthara said, with something like admiration. We taught them about advanced metallurgy, and they used it to build better armor-piercing shells. We showed them exotic chemistry, and they used it to make fire that burns through anything. The elder ships were dying around them. Systems that had functioned for millions of years were failing as human fire ate through them like acid through flesh. The beautiful crystal corridors were becoming furnaces. The perfect biomechanical networks were dissolving into toxic sludge. We need to retreat, Morthic announced. We need to warn the other elders about these humans. How do we retreat from creatures who are faster than us, more aggressive than us, and better at killing than we ever imagined? Vexton asked. The question hung in the burning air like smoke. The elders had spent millions of years believing they were the ultimate form of life in the universe. They had forgotten what it felt like to be prey. The humans are broadcasting something, Zixthara reported. A message on all frequencies. Captain Santo's voice filled the dying ship. This is the human species saying hello to the galaxy. We know you've been watching us. We know you think we're primitive. We want you to understand something important. Her voice was calm, professional, and absolutely terrifying in its certainty. We are primitive. We are crude and violent and stubborn. We build ugly ships and use simple weapons and refuse to accept that anything is impossible. We have been killing things that are bigger than us since we learned to throw rocks. Another wave of shells struck the elder ships. Fire bloomed in sections that had never known heat. The elders thought they could teach us our place in the universe, Santos continued. They thought we would be impressed by their advanced technology and ancient wisdom. They thought we would give up our weapons and become peaceful under their guidance. Her laugh was not pleasant. They were wrong. We don't want to be peaceful. We don't want to transcend our physical limitations. We like being dangerous. We like being the thing that other species have nightmares about. The message continued as elder ships burned in the vacuum of space. So here is our message to the galaxy. We are humans. We are primitive. The last elder ship limped through space like a wounded animal. Half of its beautiful crystal hull was blackened and cracked. Fires still burned in dozens of sections, despite the crew's desperate efforts to contain them. Elder Zixthara could barely maintain his gaseous form as his ship's life support systems failed around him. "Emergency transmission to the Elder Council," he ordered. "Priority 1. Immediate retreat authorization required." The response came quickly from the galactic capital. Elder Supreme Cathara, oldest of all the elders, materialized in the communication chamber. Her light form was ancient and vast, containing the wisdom of billions of years. "What is the meaning of this panic?" she demanded. "You were sent to guide a primitive species, not to flee from them in terror." "The humans are not primitive," Zixthara replied desperately. "They are predators. Pure, evolved predators. They turned our own technology against us. They are burning our ships with weapons we thought were obsolete." The Supreme Elder's form flickered with disbelief. "Impossible. No species using kinetic weapons could threaten Elder ships. Our shields are designed to stop planet-killing energy. Beams. They do not use energy weapons," Zixthara explained as another explosion rocked his dying ship. "They use fire. Fire that burns through our hulls like acid. Fire that feeds on our own technology. Fire that turns our ships into furnaces." Behind his fleeing vessel, the human fleet pursued with deadly patience. Admiral Chun had ordered a long-range chase, wanting to ensure that the surviving Elder ship carried her message to the rest of the galaxy. "All ships maintain pursuit formation," she commanded from the bridge of the Defiance. "Keep them in range, but do not destroy them. I want them to reach home with their story intact." Dr. Okafor looked up from his console. "Admiral, we have been monitoring their communications. They are reporting to something called the Elder Council. It sounds like a galactic government of some kind." "Good," Chun replied coldly. "Let them tell their leaders what happens when someone calls humans primitive. Let the whole galaxy know." The human ships fired another volley of Prometheus rounds. These shells were different from the earlier ones. The human engineers had been studying the Elder technology during the battle, learning how to make their weapons even more effective. The new shells contained something humans called smart fire. It was a chemical compound that could analyze the materials it was burning and adapt its burn temperature accordingly. When it hit Elder biomechanical systems, it burned at exactly the right temperature to cause maximum damage without wasting energy. Elder Zixthara watched in horror as the shells struck his ship. The fire that erupted from the impact points was unlike anything he had ever seen. It moved through his ship's corridors like a living thing, seeking out critical systems and consuming them with terrible efficiency. "This is impossible," he whispered. "Fire cannot be intelligent. Fire cannot think. But human fire could, because humans had learned to make it think." Each shell contained microscopic sensors that analyzed the surrounding environment and adjusted the chemical reaction accordingly. It was primitive technology, made smart through human ingenuity. "Sir," reported his tactical officer, "the fire is spreading to our main power core. If it reaches the quantum generators, the entire ship will be destroyed." Zixthara made a decision that would have been unthinkable hours earlier. Jettison the damaged sections. Cut away everything that is burning. "Sir, that is 30% of the ship. We will lose most of our crew." "Better to lose 30% than 100%. Zixthara replied grimly. The Elder ship began cutting away pieces of itself, leaving burning sections to drift in space as the main hull fled toward the edge of the solar system. It was a desperate measure that saved the ship, but destroyed everything the Elders believed about their own superiority. Admiral Chun watched the alien vessels retreat with professional satisfaction. "Captain Santos, one more volley. I want to make sure they remember this conversation." The UE's Retribution fired its final Prometheus round. This shell was special, designed not to destroy, but to deliver a message. When it struck the Elder ship, it burned through the hull and then stopped leaving a hole that formed letters in perfect Elder script. From Earth with fire. The message was clear. Humans had not just defeated the Elders. They had done it with style, with precision, and with a touch of psychological warfare that left no doubt about their intentions. "Sir," Commander Park reported, "the alien vessel is crossing the heliopause. They are leaving our system." "Let them go," Chun ordered. "But keep long-range sensors locked on them. I want to know where they go and who they talk to." The human fleet regrouped in the outer system, their crews celebrating the most important victory in human history. They had faced beings with millions of years of technological advancement and won. They had done it with weapons their enemies considered primitive and tactics. Their enemies had forgotten. Dr. Okafor approached Admiral Chun on the bridge. "Admiral, what have we started? When word of this battle spreads, the entire galaxy will know that humans can defeat Elder technology." Chun smiled, but it was not the cold smile of earlier. Now it was the smile of someone who had seen the future and liked what she saw. "Doctor, we have not started anything. We have finished something. For millions of years, the Elders have controlled galactic civilization by making everyone else afraid of their superior technology. Today, we proved that superior technology means nothing if you do not have the will to use it properly." She gestured toward the tactical display, where the burning wreckage of Elder ships still glowed in the darkness. The Elders became so advanced that they forgot how to fight. They became so civilized that they forgot how to be dangerous. They thought evolution meant giving up the ability to kill your enemies. Her voice grew harder. But humans never forgot. We never became so civilized that we stopped being killers. We never became so advanced that we gave up our weapons. We stayed primitive, because primitive is what keeps you alive. The celebration continued throughout the human fleet, but Admiral Chun was already thinking about the future. This victory would change everything. The galaxy would know that humans could not be intimidated by superior technology or ancient wisdom. "Communications, send a message to Earth Command," she ordered. "Tell them to begin full military production. We are going to need more ships, more weapons, and more fire-breathing shells." "Are we preparing for invasion, sir?" asked Commander Park. "No," Chun replied. "We are preparing for expansion. The galaxy just learned that humans do not bow down to anyone. Now they are going to learn what happens when humans decide to reach for the stars." 6 months later, human ships began appearing throughout the galaxy. They were ugly, practical vessels that looked like flying weapon platforms. They carried crews who had grown up learning to fight impossible odds and win through sheer stubbornness. The Elder Council tried to organize resistance, but they discovered something terrible. Their client species had been watching the battle at Earth. They had seen Elder ships burning and Elder commanders fleeing in terror. The myth of Elder invincibility was shattered forever. One by one, species that had submitted to Elder guidance for thousands of years began demanding independence. They had seen what happened when someone stood up to the Elders, and they wanted the same freedom that humans had claimed. The Elders found themselves fighting wars on dozens of fronts, but they had forgotten how to win wars. Their technology was still superior, but their will to fight was gone. They had become too civilized to be effective killers. Humans, on the other hand, had never been more dangerous. Each new world they reached received the same message that the Elders had heard. "We are humans. We are primitive, violent, and completely insane. We will fight anything, anywhere, for any reason." The galaxy learned to fear a new phrase, "where fire breathes through hull and gun." It became the human battle cry, the promise that any enemy would burn no matter how advanced their technology or how ancient their wisdom. Admiral Chun, now promoted to Fleet Admiral and commander of all human space forces, stood on the bridge of her new flagship. Through the viewports, she could see a dozen star systems that flew human flags. Colonies, trade stations, and military bases that had been built with human fire and human will. Dr. Okafor, what do our intelligence reports say about Elder activity? The scientist, now her chief advisor on alien affairs, consulted his data. They are still retreating, Admiral. Their client species continue to rebel. Several Elder worlds have requested human protection against their former masters. Sean nodded with satisfaction. And what do the other species say about us? They call us the apex predators of the galaxy. Some worship us as gods of war. Others fear us as demons of destruction. But they all respect us. Good, Sean replied. Respect is better than love. Fear is better than friendship. As long as they know what happens when someone threatens humans, we will have peace. She looked out at the stars, knowing that human ships were exploring every corner of the galaxy. Wherever they went, they carried the same message. Humanity had arrived, and humanity would not be stopped. The age of human expansion had begun with fire and fury. The galaxy would remember the day when primitive humans proved that advanced. The alarm bells rang through the bridge of the Kethfor, raider ship Blood Fang. Captain Zextul's 4 eyes focused on the scanner display, his scaled fingers drumming against the command chair. After 30 years of piracy in the outer spiral, he knew a perfect target when he saw one. Sir, we have a single ship on approach vector 77 Alpha, reported his second-in-command, a thin Velaryon named Skix. Energy signature is minimal. Hull design appears to be human origin. Zextul's mouth opened in what his species considered a smile, showing rows of sharp teeth. Humans, the newest species to join the galactic community, barely 200 years since first contact. Their technology was primitive compared to the ancient civilizations that ruled the galaxy. Their ships were slow, their weapons outdated, and their crews inexperienced in real combat. What type of vessel? Zextul asked, though he already suspected. The answer, cargo hauler, sir. The Resolute Dawn. Registry shows it's carrying mining equipment to the Tertius colonies. Perfect. Mining equipment meant valuable metals and rare elements. The kind of cargo that sold well on the black markets of the Rim worlds. Zextul had raided dozens of human ships over the past 5 years. They always surrendered quickly. Humans were weak, scared creatures who valued their lives more than their cargo. How many escort ships? He asked. None, sir. She's running alone. Even better. A lone cargo ship in the dangerous outer spiral was practically begging to be robbed. Zextul wondered if humans would ever learn to travel in convoy like the other species did. Probably not. They were too arrogant, thinking their status as a protected developing species would keep them safe. Signal the pack, Zextul ordered. All ships moved to intercept positions. Standard raid formation. The Blood Fang was the flagship of a 5-ship raiding pack. 2 fast attack vessels, 2 boarding ships, and his command cruiser. More than enough firepower to handle anything the humans might throw at them. The other ships began moving into position, spreading out to surround the human vessel. On the main screen, the Resolute Dawn grew larger as they approached. It was typical human design, boxy, functional, with no regard for the elegant curves preferred by older galactic civilizations. The hull was dark gray metal with obvious weld marks and repair patches. Definitely a working ship, not some fancy diplomatic vessel. Range? Zextul asked. 50,000 kilometers in closing, sir. Any response from the target? They're hailing us, sir. Standard emergency frequency. Zextul laughed, a harsh sound that made several bridge crew members step back. Put them through. Let's see how quickly they beg. The main screen flickered and showed the bridge of the human ship. A woman sat in the captain's chair, her dark hair pulled back in a simple knot. Her uniform was clean but worn. Her face was calm, showing no sign of fear. Behind her, Zextel could see other crew members at their stations. Humans mostly, but he spotted a few aliens as well. "This is Captain Sarah Chun of the merchant vessel Resolute Dawn," the woman said. Her voice was steady, professional. "You are conducting an illegal intercept in neutral space. Please identify yourselves and state your intentions." Zextel felt a moment of surprise. Most human captains started pleading or offering bribes immediately. This one was different. Still, it didn't matter. They all broke eventually. "I am Captain Zextel of the Kethver Syndicate," he replied, letting his voice carry the full weight of his reputation. "Your ship and cargo now belong to us. Prepare to be boarded. Any resistance will result in the destruction of your vessel and the death of your crew." Captain Chun's expression didn't change. "I see. And if we surrender?" "Your crew will be transferred to escape pods and released at the nearest inhabited system. Your cargo becomes ours. It's a fair trade, your lives for your goods." The human captain seemed to consider this for a moment. She looked around her. Bridge, as if consulting with her officers. Zextel couldn't hear what they were saying, but he saw several nods and hand gestures. Finally, Chun looked back at the screen. "We need a few minutes to discuss this among the crew," she said. "Some of them are frightened. They need time to understand the situation." "You have 10 minutes, Zextel replied. "After that, we begin shooting." The screen went dark. Zextel turned to his crew, feeling satisfaction at how easily this was. "Going. Move to boarding positions. Prep the capture teams. This will be over soon." The 5 raider ships closed in on the Resolute Dawn. The human ship continued on its course, making no attempt to run or fight. Its engines maintained the same steady output. Its weapons remained powered down. Everything looked normal for a surrendering merchant vessel. "Sir," Skix reported, "the human ship is transmitting on several frequencies. Standard distress calls mostly. Emergency beacons, requests for assistance from any nearby vessels." "Let them," Zextel said with amusement. "By the time help arrives, we'll be long gone with their cargo." As the minutes passed, Zextel studied the human ship more carefully. The Resolute Dawn was larger than most cargo haulers, but that just meant more space for valuable goods. The hull showed signs of regular maintenance, which suggested the owners took good care of their investment. The engine configuration was standard human design, reliable but not particularly fast. "Time's up," Zextel announced. "Hail them again." "They." Screen activated, showing Captain Chun once more. She looked tired now, as if the weight of the situation was finally hitting her. "We've decided to surrender," she said quietly. "My crew doesn't want to die for a cargo hold full of mining equipment. We'll cooperate fully with your boarding procedures." "Wise choice," Zextel replied. "Maintain your current course and speed. Prepare your crew for transfer to the emergency pods. Any attempt to resist or sabotage your ship will result in immediate execution." "Understood," Chun said. "We'll be ready for your boarding teams." The transmission ended. Zextel felt the familiar rush of victory. Another successful raid, another profitable day. The human ship was now completely surrounded by his vessels, with nowhere to run even if they changed their minds. "Deploy boarding pods," he ordered. Teams Alpha through. Delta, standard seizure protocol. "I want that ship secured in 30 minutes. The boarding pods launched from 2 of his ships, small armored vessels designed to attach directly to a target's hull and cut through with plasma torches. Each pod carried a squad of heavily armed pirates from various species. They had done this hundreds of times before. Zextel watched the pods close the distance to the human ship. Everything was going perfectly. The Resolute Dawn maintained course and speed, showing no signs of resistance. Its crew was probably huddled together somewhere, waiting to be herded into escape pods. Pods making contact with target hull, reported. The boarding team leader. Beginning cutting procedures now. On the tactical display, Zexthul could see the 5 boarding pods attached to different points along the human ship's hull. The plasma cutters were already at work, slicing through the outer armor to create entry points. In a few minutes, his teams would be inside, securing the bridge and cargo holds. "Sir," Skix said suddenly, "I'm detecting some unusual energy readings." "From the target vessel. What kind of readings?" Zexthul asked, though he wasn't particularly concerned. Human ships often had strange energy signatures. Their technology was still developing. Power fluctuations throughout the ship, almost like they're reconfiguring something. Before Zexthul could respond, Captain Sean's face appeared on the screen again. But this time she wasn't calling to surrender or beg. She was smiling. It was a cold, dangerous smile that made Zexthul's blood run cold. "Captain Zexthul," she said calmly, "I have one word for you and your crews." She paused, her smile growing wider. "Pandora." The moment Captain Chun spoke the word Pandora, everything changed. The Resolute Dawn began to transform before Zexthul's eyes. Panels along the hull slid open with mechanical precision, revealing rows of weapon ports that had been completely hidden moments before. The dull gray cargo ship suddenly bristled with railguns, plasma cannons, and missile tubes. What had looked like repair patches were actually camouflaged armor plating that now folded back to expose military-grade firepower. "Impossible," Zexthul whispered, staring at the tactical display as his ship's computers frantically updated their assessment of the human vessel. The Resolute Dawn wasn't a cargo hauler at all. It was a warship. A very well-disguised, very dangerous warship. "Sir?" Skix shouted from his station. "Energy readings are off the charts. That ship has enough firepower to destroy our entire pack." But Zexthul was more worried about his boarding teams. 5 pods full of his best pirates were now attached to the hull of what had revealed itself to be a military vessel. A trap. They had walked straight into a perfectly laid trap. "Alpha Team to command," crackled the voice of his boarding team leader over the comm. "We've breached the hull and are moving inside. This place is strange, sir. The corridors are too narrow, and there are blast doors everywhere." "Get out of there," Zexthul barked. "It's a trap. All teams abort and return to ships immediately." But it was already too late. On the human ship, Sergeant Marcus Webb crouched behind a makeshift barricade in Corridor 7. The big man's scarred face was calm as he watched his motion sensors. 30 years of military service had taught him patience. The aliens were coming, just as Captain Chun had predicted they would. "Contacts approaching from Section C and D," he whispered into his comm unit. 4 hostiles each group, armed with standard pirate gear. "Copy that, Marcus?" came Chun's voice. "Remember, we want some of them alive for questioning." "Understood, Captain. Non-lethal takedowns when possible." Webb smiled grimly. The pirates had no idea what they were walking into. The Resolute Dawn might look like a cargo ship on the outside, but inside it was a maze of defensive positions, hidden weapons, and tactical surprises. Every corridor could be sealed independently. Every room had multiple exit routes. The humans had spent months preparing for this moment. The first group of pirates rounded the corner, moving in a loose formation that would have been effective against scared civilians. Against trained soldiers, it was suicide. Webb waited until they were in the middle of the corridor, then pressed a button on his control pad. Hidden panels in the walls slid open, revealing automated defense turrets. But instead of deadly projectiles, they fired nets made of high-strength polymer fiber. The 4 pirates were tangled and brought down before they could even raise their weapons. Gas canisters dropped from the ceiling, releasing a fast-acting sedative that put them to sleep in seconds. Section C secured, Webb reported. 4 prisoners, no casualties. Similar reports came in from around the ship as the other boarding teams were systematically captured or neutralized. The humans had turned their own vessel into a giant trap, using the aliens' expectations against them. The pirates expected to find frightened merchants. Instead, they found soldiers who knew their ship better than they knew their own names. Lieutenant Sarah Kim had positioned herself in the main cargo bay, which the pirates would certainly try to secure. She was a small woman, barely 5 feet tall, but she had earned her rank in the border wars, fighting against enemies twice her size. When the airlock cycled open and 6 pirates charged in, she was ready. The cargo bay looked normal enough. Rows of shipping containers, standard loading equipment, dim lighting. The pirates spread out to search for crew members and valuable goods. They never noticed the shipping containers were all empty, or that some of them weren't containers at all. Kim pressed her detonator. The fake containers exploded outward, not with deadly force, but with expanding foam that filled the entire bay in seconds. The pirates found themselves trapped in a substance that hardened around them like quick-setting concrete. They couldn't move, couldn't see, and could barely breathe through the emergency air filters built into the foam. Cargo bay secured, Kim reported cheerfully. 6 more for the collection. Back on the bridge of the Bloodfang, Zexthul watched his carefully planned raid fall apart in real time. His boarding teams had gone silent one by one. The tactical display showed his pod still attached to the human ship, but there was no sign of his pirates inside. "Sir?" Skix reported with panic. In his voice, "The human ship is powering up weapons. Multiple target locks on all our vessels. Evasive maneuvers." Zexthul shouted, "All ships scatter." But the human ship was already moving. The Resolute Dawn accelerated with shocking speed, far faster than any cargo hauler should have been able to move. Its hidden engines revealed their true power as the disguised warship positioned itself to block the raiders' escape routes. The first volley of human weapons fire was precise and devastating. Railgun slugs tore through the armor of the nearest raider ship, targeting engines and weapon systems with surgical accuracy. The aliens weren't trying to destroy the pirate vessels. They were disabling them, leaving them helpless but alive. "Return fire," Zexthul ordered desperately. His ships opened up with everything they had. Plasma beams and missile salvos streaked toward the human vessel. But the Resolute Dawn moved like a dancer, twisting and rolling through space with impossible grace. Its point defense systems shot down incoming missiles, while its armor absorbed hits that should have crippled it. This wasn't how space combat was supposed to work. Ships were supposed to stand off at long range and exchange fire until one side's shields failed. They weren't supposed to charge straight into the enemy formation like some ancient warrior looking for hand-to-hand combat. But that's exactly what the humans were doing. The Resolute Dawn closed to knife-fighting range with Zexthul's command. "Ship." At this distance, every shot was a guaranteed hit. The human weapons began systematically dismantling the Bloodfang's combat systems. "Shields failing," Skix reported. "Engines at 30%. Weapons offline." On the main screen, Captain Chun's face appeared again. She was still calm, still professional, but there was something in her eyes that made Zexthul's blood run cold. It was the look of a predator that had finally cornered its prey. "Captain Zexthul," she said pleasantly. "I should probably introduce myself properly. I'm Captain Sarah Chun, commanding officer of the U.S. Resolute Dawn, Anti-Piracy Task Force. 7. You and your crews are under arrest for violation of Galactic Maritime Law, Section 47. Armed robbery in neutral space. Anti-Piracy Task Force? Zexthul repeated weakly. That's right. We've been hunting your little group for 6 months now. Amazing how much information you can gather when you let yourselves be raided a few times. We know your patrol routes, your safe houses, your fence operations, and your crew rosters. The implications hit Zexthul like a physical blow. The other ships you raided ... were all decoys, every single one. We've been feeding you false targets and watching you take. The bait. Did you really think it was coincidence that you kept finding lone human ships in convenient locations? Around the Blood Fang, the other raider ships were in similar condition. Dead in space, their crews alive, but their ships completely disabled. The humans had fought with a precision and ruthlessness that Zexthul had never encountered before. How? He asked. How did you know we would attack this ship? Captain Chun smiled that cold smile again. Because we know how you think, Captain. You see humans as weak, easy targets. You assume our technology is primitive because it looks different from yours. You've never bothered to study our military history or our tactical doctrines. She leaned forward slightly. That was your first mistake. Your second was assuming we fight alone. Before Zexthul could ask what she meant, the space around his disabled fleet began to shimmer. One by one, 3 more human ships decloaked from their hiding. Spots. A destroyer, a fast attack craft, and a support vessel. They had been there the entire time, waiting and watching. You see, Captain Sean continued, humans learned something important from our early encounters with galactic civilization. We learned that everyone underestimates us. Everyone assumes we're primitive, backwards, harmless. So we decided to use that against you. The support ship was already deploying capture shuttles to collect the disabled pirate vessels. There would be no escape, no last-minute rescue. The Kethver raiding pack had been completely and utterly defeated by what they thought was a single cargo ship. Welcome to human warfare, Captain Zexthul, Chun said. I hope you're ready to learn why attacking our ships is the worst mistake you could possibly make. In the detention bay of the Resolute Dawn, Captain Zexthul sat behind a force field barrier, trying to understand what had happened to his fleet. Through the transparent aluminum wall, he could see his captured crew members being processed by human security teams. They were being treated well, given medical attention, food, and water, but they were definitely prisoners. The door opened and Captain Chun entered, carrying a data pad and 2 cups of something that smelled like coffee. She set 1 cup down, where Zexthul could reach it through the security slot. It's not poisoned, she said, settling into a chair across from him. Though I understand if you don't trust me. Zexthul ignored the coffee. What do you want, human? Information. And to satisfy your curiosity about how we beat you so easily. Chun took a sip from her cup. You keep looking at me like I'm some kind of monster, like what we did was impossible. It was impossible, Zexthul said bitterly. No one fights the way you humans fight. It's unnatural. Chun laughed softly. Unnatural? Captain, you've been raiding ships for 30 years. Haven't you ever wondered why human crews are different from everyone else? You surrender more quickly. You value individual lives over profit. Sometimes, yes, but not when it matters. Chun leaned forward. Tell me, in all those raids you've conducted, how many times have you fought a military vessel? Zexthul thought about it. Military ships don't travel alone. They're too well defended, too organized. We stick to merchants and civilians. Exactly. You prey on the weak because it's profitable and safe. But you've never actually fought a war, have you? Not a real war. The pirate captain felt a chill run down his spine. What do you mean? I mean, you fight like a businessman, not a soldier. You calculate risks and profits. You retreat when the odds turn against you. You treat combat like a transaction. Chun's voice became harder. Humans don't fight transactions, Captain. Humans fight wars. The door opened again, and Chief Engineer Marcus Webb entered. The big man nodded to Chun and activated a holographic display that showed the recent battle from multiple angles. The captain asked me to explain our tactics, Webb said in his gravelly voice. Might help you understand what happened. The hologram showed the moment when the Resolute Dawn revealed its true nature. Zexthel watched his own ships scatter in panic as the human vessel transformed from prey to predator. First lesson, Webb said, pointing to the display. Humans don't fight fair. We fight to win. While your species developed honor codes and rules of engagement, we developed deception and surprise. The display shifted to show the interior battles. Zexthel saw his boarding teams being systematically captured by defenders, who seemed to know exactly where they would go and what they would do. Second lesson, Webb continued. Humans think like pack hunters. We don't just plan for the attack. We plan for the counterattack, the retreat, the pursuit, and everything that comes after. Every human on this ship knew their role in the operation. But how did you know we would attack this specific ship? Zexthel demanded. Chun smiled grimly. Because we've been studying you for months. Every raid you've conducted in human space, every pattern in your behavior, every tactical decision you've made. We built a psychological profile of your entire operation. She gestured to the hologram, which now showed a map of the outer spiral with dozens of marked locations. You always attack lone ships. You prefer cargo haulers to passenger vessels. You avoid military patrols. You operate in specific sectors where response times are slow. You follow the same basic pattern every time. All pirates follow patterns, Zexthel protested. Yes, but most species don't have the patience to map those patterns across months of observation. They react to individual incidents. Humans play the long game. Webb laughed, a sound like grinding metal. Tell him about the merchant cruise, Captain. Ah. Yes. Chun's expression became almost predatory. Those ships you raided over the past year? The ones that surrendered so easily? Half of them were crewed by retired military personnel. Volunteers who let themselves be captured so they could study your boarding procedures, your equipment, your crew composition. Zexthel felt sick. You used your own people as bait. They volunteered, Chun said simply, because they understood the mission. Every human you robbed, every crew member you put in an escape pod, every cargo container you stole, it all went into our database. We learned how you think, how you operate, how you make decisions. The hologram shifted again, showing detailed schematics of Kethfer ships and equipment. Information that should have been impossible for outsiders to obtain. Third lesson, Webb said. Humans share information. Not just with our military, but with everyone. Those merchant captains you robbed, they talked to other merchant captains. The crew members you released, they were debriefed by our intelligence services. Within days of every raid, we knew exactly what weapons you used, what your ships looked like inside, what languages your crew spoke. But that's... Zexthel struggled to find the words. That's not how it works. Merchants don't work with military. Civilians don't spy for governments. Other species don't work that way, Chun agreed. But humans do. When you attack one of us, you attack all of us. That's something your people never understood. The display changed to show the space battle itself. Zexthel watched his ships firing at the Resolute Dawn, their shots going wide as the human vessel moved with impossible agility. Your ships fight like individuals, Webb observed, each captain making their own decisions, following their own tactics. Look at your formation. It's loose, disorganized. Each ship is trying to protect itself first. The hologram highlighted. the human ships as they decloaked and moved into position. Their formation was tight, coordinated, with each vessel supporting the others. Humans fight like a single organism, Chun explained. Every ship captain knows what the others will do before they do it. We train together, plan together, think. Together, when you fight one human ship, you're fighting all of them. That's impossible, Sexthel said weakly. Ships can't coordinate that precisely in real-time combat. They can if the crews trust each other completely, Webb replied. If they've trained together for years. If they're willing to take risks that other species consider suicidal. The display showed the moment when the Resolute Dawn charged directly into the pirate formation, exposing itself to massive return fire. Any rational commander would have stayed at long range and traded shots safely. Fourth lesson, Chun said quietly. Humans don't calculate acceptable losses the same way other species do. You retreat when the odds are against you. We advance when the odds are against us. You're insane, Sexthel whispered. No, we're committed. There's a difference. Chun stood up and walked to the holographic display. Every species in the galaxy has been shaped by evolution, Captain. Some evolved to be strong, some to be smart, some to be fast. Humans evolved to be stubborn. She gestured to the battle replay. Look at your crew's behavior when the fight started going badly. Half of them panicked. The other half started looking for escape routes. That's normal, rational behavior for most species. The display focused on the human crew during the battle. They looked tense, focused, but not panicked. Even when enemy fire was hitting their ship, they stayed at their posts and followed orders. Humans don't panic the same way, Webb explained. We get angry. And angry humans are the most dangerous things in the galaxy. But why? Sexthel asked desperately. Why fight so hard for a cargo ship? Why risk your lives for mining equipment? Chun looked at him with something almost like pity. You still don't get it, do you? This was never about the cargo, Captain. This was about sending a message. She walked back to her chair and sat down. Every pirate crew in this sector is going to hear about what happened here. They're going to learn that human ships aren't easy targets anymore. They're going to understand that attacking us means war, not just robbery. One battle doesn't change anything, Sexthel said, but his voice lacked conviction. One battle changes everything, Shen replied. Because humans don't fight one battle. At a time, we fight campaigns. We fight entire wars with a single engagement. Webb activated another display, this one showing a galactic map with dozens of red dots scattered across multiple star systems. While we were hunting your little fleet, he said with satisfaction, other human task forces were tracking down the rest of the Kethfer Syndicate. Your supply bases, your safe houses, your business partners. Sexthel stared at the map in horror. Every red dot represented a location his organization used for operations. The humans had found them all. Fifth lesson, Chun said softly. Humans don't just win battles. We eliminate threats completely. By the time you're released from prison, Captain, the Kethfer Syndicate will be a footnote in history. She stood up to leave, then paused at the door. You asked why we fight so differently from other species. The answer is simple, because we have to. Every other species in the galaxy is stronger than us, or smarter than us, or more advanced than us. The only way humanity survives is by being more committed than anyone else. As the door closed behind her, Sexthel sat in his cell and finally understood what he had awakened. The humans weren't just another species to be preyed upon. They were apex predators disguised as herbivores, and they had been hunting him from the moment 3 days after the capture of the Kethfer raiding fleet, Commander Elena Vasquez sat in the communications center of Naval Station Kepler, watching data streams flow across dozens of monitors. As head of the Human Anti-Piracy Coordination Network, She had been waiting for this moment for over a year. "Signal strength is good on all channels," reported Lieutenant Torres from his console. "We have confirmed contact with 47 human vessels, 12 colonial governments, and 8 allied species naval commands." Elena nodded, feeling the familiar thrill of a plan coming together. The capture of Zextil's fleet had been just the beginning. Now came the real operation, the systematic dismantling of the largest pirate organization in the outer spiral. "Activate the beacon," she ordered. Across human space, a coded signal went out on frequencies that most galactic civilizations didn't even know existed. To anyone monitoring communications, it looked like routine commercial traffic shipping. Schedules, weather reports, commodity prices. But hidden in the data streams were coordinates, timing codes, and target assignments that had been planned for months. Captain Maria Santos received the signal aboard her cargo hauler, Lucky Strike, while docked at Vega Station. She was loading supplies for the mining colonies when her ship's computer chimed softly. To any observer, she was checking a routine message from her company headquarters. In reality, she was receiving orders that would change the balance of power in 3-star systems. Santos had been a commander in the colonial navy for 15 years before retiring to become a merchant captain. Like many veterans, she stayed in touch with old colleagues and occasionally did favors for human intelligence services. What made her valuable wasn't just her military experience. It was her network of contacts throughout the commercial shipping industry. "Jimmy," she called to her first officer, a young man who looked like a typical cargo handler. "Break out the special equipment. It's time for that job we discussed." Jimmy Chun smiled and headed for the cargo bay. The Lucky Strike carried legitimate mining supplies, but hidden in sealed containers were surveillance drones, communication jammers, and other equipment that would help map Kethfer safe houses. Like dozens of other merchant vessels, Santos had been gathering intelligence on pirate operations for months. Meanwhile, on the agricultural world of New Brisbane, Farmer Jack Morrison was having his morning coffee when his personal communicator buzzed. The message looked like a routine weather update, but Morrison had learned to read the hidden codes during his 20 years as a Marine. He finished his coffee, kissed his wife goodbye, and headed to the barn where he kept his farming equipment. The equipment included a high-powered sensor array disguised as a grain silo, capable of tracking ship movements across half the system. Morrison had been monitoring pirate traffic for the past year, dutifully reporting every suspicious vessel that passed through New Brisbane's sensor range. Today, his data would help coordinate the largest anti-piracy operation in galactic history. The network extended far beyond military veterans. Dr. Sarah Kim, a xenobiologist studying coral formations on the ocean world of Tethys, interrupted her research to decode a message hidden in a scientific journal submission. The message contained genetic profiles of several alien species known to work with the Kethfer Syndicate. Her job was to identify any pirates who might try to hide among refugee populations. Merchant Captain David Park was delivering medical supplies to a remote research station when he received his orders. Park had never served in the military, but his sister had been killed in a pirate raid 5 years earlier. He volunteered to work with human intelligence services, using his medical transport as cover to visit systems where military ships couldn't go legally. His cargo hold contained medical scanners that doubled as reconnaissance equipment. Even the tourists were involved. Rebecca Thompson, a travel writer visiting the luxury resort world of Paradise Prime, received her assignment through a travel advisory update. Her job was to identify Kethfer money laundering operations disguised as legitimate businesses. As a journalist, she could ask questions and take pictures without arousing suspicion at the coordination center at Naval Station. Kepler tracked all these assets in real time. Elena Vasquez watched as status reports flowed in from across known space. Human operatives, both military and civilian, were moving into position for simultaneous strikes against Kethver operations. "How many confirmed targets?" she asked Torres. 17 major installations, 34 supply caches, and 52 business fronts across 12 star systems, he replied. "We also have positive identification on 43 Kethver vessels, currently in port at various locations." Elena smiled grimly. The Kethver syndicate thought they were fighting one human task force. They had no idea they were facing the entire human intelligence network, a web of connections that spanned half the galaxy and included everyone from retired admirals to small-town farmers. "What about our allied species?" she asked. "The Centaurian Navy has 8 ships in position. The Vegan Defense Force is contributing 12 vessels. The Altarian peacekeepers are providing ground support teams." Elena nodded. Human diplomats had been working for months to coordinate this operation, sharing intelligence with friendly governments and building a coalition against piracy. What made it possible was humanity's reputation for reliability. When humans said they would do something, other species believed them. The first strike came at 14:30 Standard Time. Captain Santos and her cargo hauler appeared at the edge of the Rigel system, where intelligence indicated a major Kethver supply depot. The depot was built into an asteroid, disguised as a mining operation. It had been operating for over 10 years without detection. Santos deployed her surveillance drones and began a detailed scan of the facility. Within minutes, she had confirmed the presence of stolen goods, illegal weapons, and several wanted criminals. She transmitted the data to a Centaurian patrol cruiser waiting in hyperspace. "Target confirmed," she reported. "Initiating surrender protocols." The Lucky Strike broadcast a standard distress signal, claiming engine failure. As expected, the pirates launched small craft to investigate and rob the apparently helpless cargo ship. The moment they were clear of the asteroid base, the Centaurian cruiser dropped out of hyperspace and disabled them with precision ion cannon fire. Similar operations were taking place across the galaxy. On Vega 7, Dr. Kim's genetic profiles helped security forces identify 3 Kethver operatives hiding among migrant workers. On Paradise Prime, Rebecca Thompson's investigations led to the arrest of a casino owner who had been washing stolen credits for years. The beauty of the human network was its flexibility. Unlike traditional military operations, which required rigid command structures and formal authorization, the human system relied on individual initiative and trust. Each operative made their own tactical decisions based on local conditions, but all worked toward the same strategic goal. Farmer Morrison detected a convoy of suspicious ships passing through his system and alerted a vegan patrol fleet. Medical Transport Captain Park used his legitimate access to a restricted research facility to plant surveillance equipment near a suspected pirate meeting site. Even travel writer Tonson found ways to contribute, using her journalist credentials to interview people who had information about Kethver operations. The pirates never saw it coming. They were used to fighting governments and military organizations with predictable procedures and limited resources. They had no experience dealing with an enemy that included farmers, doctors, journalists, and merchants, all working together without formal command structure. Elena watched the reports flow in from across the galaxy. Strike after strike, capture. After capture, the Kethver Syndicate's network was being systematically destroyed. Within 6 hours, over 60% of their known assets had been seized or neutralized. "Commander," Torres said excitedly, "we're getting reports from the Arcturus system." The Kethver Leadership Council was meeting at their hidden headquarters. Local human assets provided targeting data for a joint strike by human and Altarian forces. Elena leaned forward. Results? 17 high-ranking Kethver commanders captured, including their overall leader. No casualties on our side. The Arcturus operation had been particularly complex. A human mining engineer named Robert Chun had spent 3 months working at an asteroid mining facility that was actually the entrance to the Kethver headquarters. Chun had used his access to map the entire complex and identify security weaknesses. When the assault began, he had disabled the emergency lockdown systems from inside DOT. As the day continued, the scope of the operation became clear. The humans hadn't just attacked one pirate fleet, they had declared war on organized piracy itself. Using intelligence gathered over months by hundreds of operatives, they had struck at every aspect of the Kethfor organization simultaneously. "Status report," Elena requested as the sun set over Naval Station Kepler. 93% of known Kethver assets neutralized or captured, Torres replied. Estimated financial damage to their organization complete. Remaining operational capacity negligible. Elena allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. The Kethver Syndicate. 6 months after the destruction of the Kethfor Syndicate, Ambassador Thane Keller of the Galactic Commerce Guild stood before the emergency session of the Outer Spiral Security Council. The amphitheater was packed with representatives from dozens of species, all gathered to discuss what many were calling the human problem. "The statistics are undeniable," Keller said, his crystalline voice echoing through the chamber. Piracy in human-controlled space has dropped by 89%. Trade route security has increased by 300%. Insurance costs for shipping through human territories have fallen to the lowest levels in recorded history. A murmur ran through the assembled delegates. These were remarkable numbers by any standard, but they came with implications that made many species uncomfortable. However, Keller continued, these improvements have come at a cost that we must consider carefully. The humans have fundamentally changed how security operations are conducted in civilized space. They have ignored traditional protocols, violated sovereignty agreements, and demonstrated a level of coordination that some find ... concerning. In the human delegation section, Admiral Janet Harrison sat quietly, listening to the debate that had been inevitable from the moment Operation Pandora succeeded. As commander of human space forces, she had expected this political backlash. Other species were always uncomfortable when humans proved more effective than expected. The Centaurian Republic wishes to voice its strong support for human anti-piracy efforts, announced Ambassador Vex, rising from his seat. Our shipping losses in joint patrol zones have decreased by 74%. Human tactical doctrine has proven highly effective. Effective, yes, replied Ambassador Senth of the Vegan Confederacy, but also unprecedented. No single species has ever coordinated intelligence assets across such a wide area. The humans have created a network that spans dozens of star systems, involving both military and civilian personnel. Admiral Harrison finally stood to address the council. If I may respond to these concerns, she said formally, the human government has acted within all applicable laws and treaties. We have shared intelligence with allied species and coordinated our operations through proper diplomatic channels. But you have also armed civilian vessels, accused Delegate. More acts of the Traitors Collective. You have used merchant ships as intelligence platforms. You have turned ordinary citizens into spies and soldiers. Harrison smiled slightly. We have used the resources available to us, Delegate, just as every species does when facing threats to their security. No other species maintains such extensive civilian involvement in military operations, Morax insisted. It is ... unnatural. Unnatural? Harrison repeated. Or simply effective. The debate that followed lasted for hours, but Harrison had heard all the arguments before. Other species were uncomfortable with humanity's approach to warfare because it didn't fit their traditional concepts of how conflicts should be conducted. They preferred clear boundaries between military and civilian, between government and end. Private sector Between war and peace, humans had no such boundaries. 2 weeks later, Harrison found herself in a very different setting, the maximum security prison on Titan Station, sitting across from former pirate Captain Zexthal. The alien looked older, his scales duller than they had been during his capture. Prison life had not been kind to him. "You wanted to see me," Harrison said without preamble. "Why?" Zexthal stared at her for a long moment before speaking. "I've been thinking about our conversation with Captain Chun, about why humans fight differently than other species. And I think I understand now. It's not just about tactics or technology. It's about what you believe war is for." Harrison leaned back in her chair. "Explain." "Most species fight to achieve specific objectives," Zexthal said slowly. "Territory, resources, political goals. When those objectives are met or become impossible to achieve, the fighting stops. Both sides calculate costs and benefits and decide when to quit." "That's logical," Harrison agreed. "But humans don't fight for objectives. You fight for principles. When someone attacks you, it's not just a tactical problem to be solved. It's a moral issue that demands resolution." Harrison said nothing, waiting for him to continue. "The Kethver Syndicate raided human ships for profit," Zexthal went on. "We calculated risks and rewards. When the risks became too high, we planned to find easier targets. But you didn't see it as a business transaction. You saw it as an act of war." "Because it was an act of war," Harrison replied quietly. "Every time you attacked a human ship, you declared war on humanity. You just didn't realize it." Zexthal nodded slowly. "And humans fight wars to win them completely. Not to gain advantage or negotiate better terms, but to eliminate the threat entirely. Now you're beginning to understand. But why?" Zexthal asked desperately. "Why not just increase your security and accept some losses as the cost of doing business? Why mobilize entire populations for what most species would consider a minor security problem?" Harrison was quiet for a long moment, considering her answer. "Because we can't afford to lose, Captain. Every other species in the galaxy has advantages over us. You're stronger, or faster, or more technologically advanced, or have larger populations. The only advantage humans have is our refusal to accept defeat." She stood to leave, then paused. "You asked Captain Chun why we fight so hard for a cargo ship full of mining equipment. The answer is simple. Because if we don't fight hard for everything, we won't survive to fight for anything." As Harrison left the prison, Zexthal sat in his cell and contemplated the true scope of his miscalculation. He had thought he was robbing merchant ships. In reality, he had declared war on a species that treated every conflict as a fight for survival. The effects of Operation Pandora continued to ripple through the galaxy. Within a year, piracy in the Outer Spiral had declined by over 90%. Criminal organizations that had operated for decades simply vanished, their leadership dead or imprisoned, their assets seized by coordinated law enforcement efforts. But the real change was psychological. Throughout the galaxy, criminal organizations began avoiding human space entirely. Ships flying human flags were left alone, even when they appeared vulnerable. Space stations with human security contracts saw their crime rates plummet. The message was clear. Humans didn't just fight back when attacked. They eliminated threats completely and permanently. Other species began studying human military doctrine, trying to understand how such a young civilization had developed such effective tactics. Military academies added courses on human warfare theory to their curricula. Alliance staff colleges invited human instructors to teach coordination and intelligence operations, but they never quite grasped the essential truth that Zexthal had finally understood in his prison cell. For humans, there was no distinction between individual survival and species survival. An attack on one human ship was perceived as an attack on all of humanity, requiring a response proportional not to the immediate damage, but to the existential threat represented. 5 years after the destruction of the HFY Syndicate, Ambassador Harrison addressed the same Galactic Security Council that had questioned human methods. "The statistics speak for themselves," she said, displaying charts that showed crime rates across human space. "Piracy is down 96%. Smuggling operations have been reduced by 87%. Terrorist incidents have dropped to near zero." She paused, looking around the amphitheater at delegates who had once criticized human tactics. "More importantly, these improvements have spread beyond human space. Our allied species have seen similar reductions in criminal activity. Our joint patrol programs have been adopted by 12 different governments. The coordination networks we developed are now being used for disaster relief, medical emergencies, and scientific research." The applause was polite, but genuine. Even former critics had to admit that human methods worked. "However," Harrison continued, "I want to address the concerns that some of you have raised about human military doctrine. You worry that our approach to security is too aggressive, too comprehensive, too human." She smiled slightly. "You're right to be concerned, because the galaxy has learned something important from the HFY incident. Attacking a human ship isn't just robbery. It's a declaration of war against a species that treats every war as a fight for survival." The amphitheater was completely silent now. "We didn't choose to be the galaxy's enforcers," Harrison said quietly. "We became enforcers because someone had to be, and no one else was willing to pay the price. Every time you choose not to respond to aggression, every time you calculate that the costs outweigh the benefits, every time you negotiate with criminals and terrorists, you make the galaxy a little less safe for everyone." She gathered her notes and prepared to leave. "Humans fight differently because we have to. Because we learned early that in a galaxy full of species stronger and more advanced than us, our only option is to be more committed than anyone else." As she walked toward the exit, Harrison delivered her final message to the assembled delegates. "So, yes, attacking a human ship is their greatest miscalculation. Not because we're the strongest, or the smartest, or the most advanced, but because we're the only species that treats every attack as if the survival of